Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by a seasoned HR leader and builder at heart. With a background in project management, venture consulting, and senior leadership, she's helped startups scale from seed through to Series B, navigating acquisitions and tackling high growth challenges head on. She's passionate about creating exceptional employee experiences from employer branding and hiring to compensation and growth. And whether it's scaling teams at hyper speed or leading through change, she's been in the trenches, building as she goes. So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcoming today's guest, the Senior VP of People and Talent at iSecurity, Sonita Uijt de Haag. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thanks for the warm welcome and a wrap up of what I've achieved to date.
Well, it was like I said before we clicked record. I have to admit, it's your LinkedIn does you justice. I mean, obviously you wrote it, and it helps make it a lot easier.
Thanks.
But you have touched so many different areas, and coming into this conversation, I was always curious about what you wanted to talk about, because you've experienced a lot, you've seen a lot. So before we dive into nitty gritty of what today is, I always like to ask everyone just kind of the teaser question. So from your perspective, what do you feel makes a high performing recruitment team?
I think high performing recruitment teams need a balance of really good soft skills, but also really good hard skills. And I know that sounds like a cop out, but the ones that I've seen that have been the best are able to know when it's a time to have a conversation from the heart and really appeal to the person versus when you're not going to be able to use that tactic and you have to look at the data and have a hard conversation about facts. I think whether you're in talent or whether you're in the people space in general, being able to balance those two areas is really, really important because different conversations and different kinds of change need different tools. Not everything can be done from the heart and not everything can be done with numbers.
So how does that work with the high performing team? Do you have a collective that have, a strong set of hard skills and soft skills collectively, or individually that bring it to a collective? That makes sense.
I think you need to have good structures in place. So the teams that I've worked with that I thought were really good, and my team does this to some extent now too, is making sure at the end of every week that you're reporting back to your stakeholders what the pipeline looks like, what some of the challenges are, how many offers are out, like that you're having those hard conversations about the actual flow of the pipeline. So this is something that there's different schools of talent, right? There's some talent people that just go out and do a lot of interviews and it's segmented. And then there's other talent people that really take that partner role to heart and they treat this like a sales pipeline almost. And I think that that's a very, very critical. Like I said, when we've had past discussions, I'm lucky. I have a really good director of talent she was at Uber before. So she knows how to do volume recruitment. So this is not, I don't say rocket science because my husband is in aerospace. So it's kind of a joke within my household.
It's 100% rocket science. Everything we do in recruitment.
No.
I mean, we could probably launch a rocket into space quicker than he can. I'm just saying, and if you're listening,
Probably, because you don't give you don't give tasks that need to be simplified to rocket scientists. You give them complicated tasks that need complicated solutions. So I think it's sort of a horribly misused expression. But I think for talent folks, being able to communicate back to the stakeholders the reality of their pipe, and then using that as a conversation of what can be changed within the process versus what is the reality of a market. So it's much easier to tell somebody, hey, your job description's insane. When you're talking about like a pool at the very, very top of a pipeline, because it's facts, it's numbers. Like you can see how many people apply, you can see what the pass-through rate is. So I think it makes it a lot easier. The most high-performing teams, I think, are the ones that are able to explain the pipe really well to their stakeholders, as well as whatever blockers you have within your control within the company, being able to use that data to maybe shine a light on something that's hard for hiring managers to hear. Perhaps it's that they have unrealistic requirements for the job spec. Perhaps it's because they're in an industry that's immature, so there's not actually that many people and they need to take a different strategy. So I think these are areas where I think there's a lot of room for innovation. We've come a long way from recruiters even like 6 years ago, which I know it's not the most elegant way to explain it, but the recruitment at that time, I remember the first person I met who was really doing like pipeline management was like, look, recruitment as it used to be was throw a bunch of shit at the wall and see what sticks.
I mean,
And
just
so I think
say what it is.
that's not a strategy. Like a strategy is like, let's go out, let's see what kind of people we find, let's see how the stakeholders react to it, let's iterate. Did we get the right kind of talent in? Does the talent exist? Was the pool big enough to have a reasonable selection? Was the pool big enough to be able to fill it the number of spots that we had? If not, how do we use the numbers and how do we use our relationships that we've built up with those stakeholders over time to change our strategy for finding more people? So I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the difference that I've seen over the years. And I've definitely seen both where it's just like hire whoever we can possibly find who's willing to work at our tiny little startup to, okay, now we're too big. We need to really have at least 3 or 4 qualified candidates. We need to be really intentional. We need a structured recruitment process. We need to understand how they're passing through. Like we need to know the difference between a healthy pass through rate and an unhealthy pass through rate. We need to train. There's a lot of education in that talent partner role as well, of not within the team, but educating hiring managers. I mean, even for me in my current company, we're going to double this year. We're going to add at least 100 people this year. And I just went to the executive meeting and I said, our number one priority, what I need from you is I want anyone who touches the recruitment process, anyone has to go through some kind of hiring training. You have to. Like, I can't be responsible for the quality of performance if you're not even willing to get people committed to following a standardized hiring process. So that's something that I think at my level, because I understand the importance of it, it's my job as a VP, SVP to go back to the executive team and get their buy-in so that they understand if they're not holding their people accountable for being involved in this training, that they'll back me when I say they're not interviewing anyone, they haven't done hiring training. This is important. We
Yeah.
agreed that the quality of hire is going to make or break us. We agreed that we want to commit to long-term performance, and we can't do that if we're not consistent in the bar that we have across the org for how people are brought in and what kind of questions and what kind of screening is the minimum required for joining us. So I think that that's you need both. You need people with the mindset of really partnering, and you also need an organization and leaders within that organization, and especially leaders over the department who understand it is actually my job to get the rest of the executive team to give a shit. That's my job. So if I can't sell that story, it makes it very, very hard for my director of talent to do her job, for the recruiters to do their job.
It's a flow down then, isn't it?
It's a
If
flow
people
down.
aren't buying
Yeah.
into it. I also love the fact you're using the phrase partner, because
Yeah.
ironically, Parative partners will set up for that. I mean, this is the same element. Is I always feel there's a partnership between whoever you're working with, but betterment of the company. And I think I've also seen, so 11 years ago when I started, it was very much, I mean, I worked for consultancies back then.
Yeah.
So it was like, here's a spec, you don't speak to anyone, here's a portal, crack on, see you later, which was awful. I mean, some people still do it, but that's mental. Over the years of working in Berlin, you kind of start to see the shift. And now I would say, I don't want to keep saying post-COVID because it was literally 5 years ago, which is crazy. But post-COVID, there has been this dramatic shift away from CV pushers
Yeah.
to, business partners, and that I think is, I agree, it's underlying performance of a recruitment team now relies on having the ability to say to a hiring manager, no, because of, and not making it an
Yeah.
emotional no, but having it as an intelligent, here's the data to support why
Yeah.
what you're looking for doesn't exist, or and having an intelligent conversation around it, which leads, I guess, quite nicely into what we're talking about today, right? So the title of this podcast is Learning the Business. So what do you, before we kind of get into what that means and how we can go do it, what does it actually mean to you? When you said to me about it to begin with, why do you feel learning the business is important, and what really is it?
I think it's important because when you're talking to stakeholders, and I know everybody says this, like, you have to have this curiosity, but you really do have to have a curiosity for how things fit together. You have to understand several layers in, and there were different tools for this. Like in the Lean Six Sigma time, you would go five whys in, and I think five whys, if you don't know what curiosity is and you need to like jumpstart your curiosity muscle, go five whys in. I need to hire a head of customer success. Why? Because we're adding 30 new customers per month. Why? Because we're trying to grow the business to this much in ARR, and those first 30 customers have subsidiaries, which means that it's going to multiply, which means that I'm going to have to, and then you keep asking them why, and then you get an idea that that head of customer success isn't just a conversation about hiring a head of customer success. It's about building a team of customer success agents that might be upselling, that might be doing technical support. That so it gives you a better understanding of not just who you're hiring for now, but also what's
Yeah.
around the corner. So I would say whatever business you're learning about, asking a lot of questions about why someone needs something that they need is a really, really good way, one, to connect with the person so that when you do come back later, and or if you understand the business in that way, let's take that example, and you go to screen for, first you hire the head of customer success, maybe you find somebody in the pipe that's a really strong technical customer success person, but they're not necessarily here for right now, because you took the time to understand where this person is going with their org and what kind of business problem it was trying to solve. It helps you think about different ways that you can innovate within your field, right? You might come across a profile where you're like, hey, I remember you said that we're going to start building out a technical customer support arm. I have this profile. Are you interested? And then that suddenly creates a different conversation. It means that you help solve a problem that the person didn't know that they had yet. So I think this is why it's really good, no matter what area you're in, whether it's talent or the people space, that when someone presents you with, hey, I have this challenge, I need it to be fixed right now, that you're like, well, where did this challenge come from? And like, is this, how do you see this fixing this? And like, where are you going with this? And really taking the time to listen. I think what's interesting is most people, and I just had this actually because I am just started this role 3 months ago. Most people will take the time to tell you, like, they're looking for somebody to talk to. They want a sparring partner. So, like, sometimes being a sparring partner, and I think I told you this in some of our past conversations, like, it's not about having the most experience. It's also just about like asking interesting questions. Like, okay, so
Mm.
if you do, like, when you do that, then what is that going to fix? And like, why this way and not that way? And then people have to articulate why they made the decision that they made. When I started this role, one of the things that I inherited was sales bonuses, which I had not had to do to the level of detail that I had to do at this time. But it was interesting because in order to be able to do them, I had to understand how all of the salespeople fit together and how the work flows and why they share certain sales compensation across accounts. And I thought that was very interesting. And because the chief commercial officer didn't want to own this problem by himself, he sat down and explained this to me so many times. And I was more frustrated with myself than he was. So I was like, I can't believe I don't understand this yet. He's like, it's a complicated system. We have a good, like, go easy on yourself. And so it was very interesting, like, to think I'm supposed to be helping this person, but they were really glad to help me. So they had someone else looking at the problem, someone else that
Yeah.
they could be sparring with to fix it and have a more permanent solution so that the weight is not on one set of shoulders. So I think that it's something that, especially if you're earlier in your career, you might hold back a little bit, but don't take for granted how willing people are, especially the higher up they go, to explain what they're seeing and also be open to new perspectives on maybe there's another way that they could do it, or maybe if they explain it to you well enough, it's not all on their shoulders. So the value add is definitely there.
I always feel that recruitment or talent acquisition, yes, we create nice experiences and we encourage a diverse funnel into for our employees and we hire people. But I also feel like the core of our role is more we're knowledge brokers. That's how I view it.
Yeah.
You have to have as much knowledge as possible to be able to ease as many processes. And I love the fact that you're able, what you've shared there about coming back to the technical customer success. That's something that obviously you do normally on the external side. We've always been taught, try to plug a gap before the gap becomes a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nice to hear that it's coming more into the internal side, because ultimately that does make the external redundant. But hey, it's my job, it's fine, don't worry about it, we'll come for my job. But that is what it should be. That's how you take recruiters from a good performer to a great performer, and from a good business partner to a great one. If you're able to spot the problems before they become problems, then the hiring manager just never has a problem with for what area they're in when it comes to hiring. At least there's more.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's more problems behind the scenes. You hit the nail on the head. You've just been in the current team for 3 months when we record this. By the time it's gone live, a few more months after, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So you've come into this environment in a very senior position, right? And you've just alluded there about being open to speak to people, and because you have the title and because of the responsibilities, it's probably people are more receptive when you message them, say, "Hey, I want to have a chat." So peel it back. How does starting a new company differ from already being inside the company when we talk about this learning and knowledge journey? Because there will be some people who've probably been in their teams for 2-3 years who this might be completely new to them, this perspective.
Mm-hmm.
They might know what they know, they might know their direct team, but knowing the wider business or go into that granular detail is going to be quite new to them.
Mm-hmm.
So how do those two elements differ from your perspective?
I'm going to give a very American answer, which is you need to refine your pitch, right? So if you're going to have a fresh start, like if you're going to have a fresh start, have a fresh start. Like I think you can go back to your stakeholders and say, I've been here a while and I want to get really good at my job. And I learned about this talent partnering model and I want to try it on you. And like, here's what you're going to get out of it. I'm going to be able to understand your business. And as part of understanding your business, I want to be here where we're solving problems together. And I think the easiest way to convince people of a talent partner model, it's actually not hard. It's real easy. I want the quality of the people that I pass on to you to be really good so that I don't waste as much of your time.
Dominant buying motive.
You know
Straight
what
in
I
there.
mean? Because
Yeah.
if you don't take that time to really go back and be like, you've told me everything I sent you is garbage, fine, I'm garbage. I mean, like, I'm sure recruiters don't do this, but I mean, this is the problem
I
when you
mean, we've
aren't.
probably had some roles where we feel like absolute shit at the end of the day from it. I'll be honest. When you feel like you've got the
It's
person
just
who's
so
perfect.
brutal. And
Yeah.
I think you get to a point where like if a hiring manager has had too many bad people passed on to them, that they're committed to
Yeah.
spend the time, because that's the sell. The sell is, I think I could do this better. And I want to do this better because I want to grow as a talent partner. I want to be more of someone who understands your business, because if I understand your business, then it means I can think more like you. And the type of people that I hand you are going to be closer to what you're looking for than if I continue down this trajectory of me thinking I know what I'm looking for without checking with you. And I think I think it's hard to take the time to do that. I think it's easier to do it in person than it is to even do in a pool. I mean, I even in a tool, I have that now where I really feel like, especially when things aren't going as fast as they are, that I would prefer that it's a weekly where we sit down and we talk through, okay, which profiles did you like, which didn't you like? And then they kind of learn if what I'm looking for in a resume. Like I have a couple of things I want someone with interesting hobbies, I'm not gonna lie. And I also like people
What
who
constitutes as an interesting hobby? Just It's
just
going to bug me
like,
if I come off this and don't ask the question.
it's not even interesting hobby, but like even just like I'd prefer to hire some like I'm interested in people who've done with their free time when they've had time in between or when they've had time to upskill where they've just picked something like really out there. So like I want to interview
Like
someone who's
stringing, the thing you jump between two
a
trees.
data analytics boot camp or UX.
Oh, I went completely different then.
Yeah, but it's not. It actually isn't. It's the same. Anybody that's going into the next wave of tech should know how to have a pretty decent command of data, or people who are taking courses on how to use AI, or people who are taking courses around product design because they understand that building people products is becoming more like UX UI design. So this kind of demonstrating that they want to go slightly outside of a very narrow view of a function, go slightly outside because they understand that good models can come from many places. For me, I always find quite interesting. So I definitely have a bias towards knowledge hoarders, which is one of my favorite terms, as you can see by the fake bookshelf.
I was
I'm
about to say
really,
the fake bookshelf is really good in coming in handy on this one. We should have had the real
yeah.
bookshelf.
But that kind of knowledge hoarders, like so people who are
Yeah.
very who want to master their craft and they get really nerdy about a specific area and so nerdy about it that they go even outside of the function a little bit to try to bring in other tools from other areas. And I think there's a lot of stuff in the people space that models other areas of the business.
So from your perspective, it doesn't matter if you've just joined a company or if you've been in the company for a while. You can take that hard reset, even if you've been in that team for a little while,
Yeah.
and just say, look, let's try it from this. There's a lot of questions that you have been saying throughout this conversation. Hopefully, someone's been getting a notepad and pen out and jotting them down because
Yeah.
they are gold, right? Peel it back on that side. Let's say they haven't. What are some of your kind of go-to questions just to ease the journey a little bit more about
Yeah.
how someone can ask a hiring manager or ask a stakeholder a little bit more about their part of the business
Yeah.
and
What's
why
key?
isn't allowed to be one of the questions? I'm just saying.
No, I can give you some questions, just some general questions to get a conversation
Yes.
going.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, well, I can give you a couple questions and I'll give you a trick.
Oh,
So I'm very extroverted, so I have to do, depending on who I'm speaking with, I have some like personality tricks that I have to use. The first one is what keeps you up at night.
oh.
So like and like just be really quiet for like what's keeping you up at night. And I, I mean, it's sometimes it is actually hiring. Like I'm just really worried we're not going to hire this person on time. And if we don't hire this person on time, I'm not going to get my quotas. If I don't get my quotas, we're not going to hit the targets. And if I don't hit the targets, then you kind of hear like their train of thought from like almost like getting them to go into a catastrophization rant. And then you can kind of hear like all the pain points, and then you listen really, really closely and think if there's anything that you can have that can make their life easier. Um, I think I'm a big believer in asking, instead of asking for feedback, asking what advice do you have for me that I could do to do my job better? Because I think when people almost go deer in a headlights when you ask for feedback, they feel like it has
Yeah.
to be this super formal thing. But if you're like what advice do you have for me on finding a better candidate? Like what is there something I'm missing? Then people are more willing to have a conversation about helping you and having advice, even though they're going to do the same thing as if they would have thought about quality feedback. And then the last one, and this one is especially because I'm a really intense extrovert and I'm horribly aware of it because I've been in tech companies my whole career. Uh, when I'm with really introverted people, I count to 20 like this, like till I'm physically
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
I was gonna say I
Because,
was gonna test you.
yeah,
Why behind it?
because I think when you're very, very extroverted and you're in the people space, we have the tendency to fill silence. And it takes very, very technical people like 10 seconds to gather their thoughts, another 10 seconds to think about what they want to say. And so, like, giving these like long stretches of silence, I think gives a sort of like a midpoint for being able to talk to technical folks and giving them the space to get their ideas out, because it takes them longer, and you're going to learn more if you can force yourself to listen. And I've noticed with most people in people functions, that is a lot longer than physically comfortable. The silence in between responses, and it's not rapid fire in those groups.
I think as well they shouldn't really be rapid firing these when you're having these types of discussions and you're trying to go deeper about problems. They should be thought through. They shouldn't be just okay and this and this and this, and then you're like, okay, is that really the problem, or
Yeah.
is there something else that we're missing and we're bypassing? We're just trying to get through the conversation. I love those. I'm gonna mark those, and then what we'll do is we'll put them out. And we put obviously the podcast out as well. Um, so when we learn about the business, do you have I don't want to say a framework, but I mean, we could say a framework. Do you have specific areas that you're trying to uncover information about? So do you have like, okay, I've just joined, so I need to learn about the leadership team, and then this area, or is it kind of just everywhere at the same time, hoard that knowledge, bring it back in, absorb it, and redistribute it, or do you kind of have a more of a strategic approach to it?
I mean, I always try to do weeklies with sales, ops, and engineering in the beginning, because that's where the most of the people are. And granted, I'm not in talent, I'm more in the people function.
Cool.
Um, I think when you're sitting down and you're listening to how teams are structured, you learn quite a lot about the business. That's the time where you ask those whys. So, like, what's the difference between business development and an account executive and a partner manager, and like how, like, where does the, like, which part of the funnel do they own? Like, getting into the weeds about that and asking those questions. I think you need it for both hiring and for people as well. It's similar in engineering. Like, how is engineering structured? Is engineering and product under the same arm? Like, can I see a good thing to ask for is any sort of documentation that they have. So, like, especially with engineering, there will be a lot of documentation. So you can go in and look at what their onboarding plans are. So the nice thing about those three departments, sales, ops, and engineering, is they're probably going to have better onboarding than you do. Like, I feel like the people function, we just like neglect our own backyard. But even in smaller teams, like, they'll have a pretty structured onboarding for people, and so you can go in and see what kind of resources new joiners have to read. And I think that's a nice way to get a lot of information without bothering folks right from the beginning. And then you have something to talk to them about. Hey, I read your vision for the engineering team. It's really interesting how what you want, what you put on the roadmap, and like, is that going to change your headcount plan in any way? And I had this in one of my old companies. Like, are you thinking about putting a role like that in here as well? Or like, you can start to already think about the person's business before you have a conversation with them, because we document everything now, whether it's Confluence or Notion. There's usually quite a lot of content on what's happening within departments, because when you're adding people, people don't want to have to continue to communicate it over and over again. And those three departments are usually very meticulous about writing it down so that they can just hand somebody an asynchronous onboarding plan from the beginning. And there's no reason that people can't ask for that as well.
So
People.
you could probably create your own as well. Say, for example, you're in the tech recruitment team, and instead of having, if they don't have the documentation that you're requiring in layman's terms, because they're probably very
Mhm.
technically heavy, you could sit down with the respective leaders or your stakeholders. You could go to their scrum meetings, and you could
Mhm.
start crafting this yourself and almost create your own. I mean, we call it our office Bible here, which, like, everything
Yeah.
that we have inside the company, albeit isn't very big at the moment, but everything is housed in one place, all processes, documentation, passwords that I always forget to everything. So everything's housed there. But I guess you could do that with your respective stakeholders. What's your vision? What's your team's vision? How does that impact the wider vision? That sort of stuff. And you can, I guess, then you've got something where you've got a pack to speak to candidates better. And then once you've got that information, you've got something you can always lean back on. Sunita, obviously from this side, there is, like I said, a ton of points that you've touched upon in this, and loads of really good questions. Um, if someone does want to kind of speak to you a bit further about how you've learned in various businesses, or if they wanted to learn more about your current team, where's the best place that they could find you?
LinkedIn.
Always LinkedIn.
I'm always on LinkedIn, though I have to say it's getting sadder over the years. I miss when I could just get actual articles to read. Now it's very full of stuff I don't necessarily want to read anymore.
Have you seen the video function that they're pushing?
I just want it to go away.
I know,
I
it's
just
like
want to,
TikTok.
all I want to read is business articles and HBR and Atlantic. So now I'm just in HBR and Atlantic
And
apps.
Peritus Partners, Tea Time with Talent
And
Acquisition
Paris
podcast.
yes, okay.
Yeah, thanks for that.
But no, because the algorithm now has it set up where it won't let you just share links, so it's only doing the scrolling. So that means things like what it used to be with business, just pure business articles. Now it's just lots of content that keeps you on LinkedIn. So I think that's a pity that it's gone from that. I've been on LinkedIn for 17 years. That was a shocker. At that last week, I got
How
the
do you feel?
notification. It's been 17 years. It's like that's like a baby.
You're literally nearly graduating university from LinkedIn.
Been on LinkedIn so long. I'm just like a
The Scottish
classic
driving
early
test.
adopter.
Oh, you
It
could
was
publish that. You could say I'm so glad I passed my driving test on LinkedIn.
I have been on LinkedIn since my first actual job in
There you go.
2007.
I think more people. I mean, this is completely off topic now, but I do think more people are going to leave LinkedIn because of this
If
features that it's just
yeah,
pushing short bite-sized learning, and that's not what LinkedIn was.
yeah,
A 30-second video about. I mean, what did I see the other day? You know the Chili's chain in the US.
hmm
It was
yeah.
that.
I miss the Chili's chain in the U.S.
Yeah, I don't think you're missing much, but it was a
The
story about
tacos
the
in
chili.
Berlin are so bad that it makes me miss the Chili's
Yeah, I
chain in
don't
the
think
U.S.
Berlin's known for its tacos thing. However, there is a fantastic Mexican place. I will find out the name and I will send it to you
Okay,
after.
good.
But the bite-sized videos, although we use them for this stuff, I feel like the ones that are just like pushing food bloggers and things like that, it's going to drive people away. But
Yeah, we
anyways,
have TikTok and Insta for that.
we do. We will find you on LinkedIn, I'm sure. But thank you so much. Like I said, for this, it was just a short recap of kind of quick fire questions that you can bring to someone. So I really appreciate you spending some time and going through it with me. And absolute best of luck with obviously the new job and the team.
Thanks.
And looking forward to hearing how many of the hires you managed to get on board.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.